Welcome back for another episode of the Casual GM podcast. I'm your host, Drew, and I'm joined always by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Drew, how about yourself?
I'm exhausted.
Exhausted. Rough week. Lot of work.
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of continuing education currently for my job. And so most of my time is just learning things. And I haven't been I'm taking a college course and I'm doing a certification program, and I've signed up for all these other journals and that kind of stuff, and I'm reading a ton. And I had forgotten what it was like to learn in this kind of setting before.
Yeah.
And I'm exhausted to the point where I was I looked up why am I tired when I'm learning? And they're like,
it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm going back to college this fall to finish my bachelor's, so I'm going to be perennially tired, I think, with all of that.
So the article that I read says that your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's active right at the front, actually, frontal, that's active when you're assimilating new information, and that burns glucose in your body at a higher rate than
Really?
if you were working out.
So and learning's a weight loss metric.
Yeah. So well, I mean, learning, one of the reasons learning could make you more tired is that it's sucking sugar out of your body.
Yeah.
And sugar is a great source of quick and fast energy, right? So they recommend, also it's stressful, when you're being tested and all this other good stuff, trying to assimilate and create new neural pathways or whatever. And so they recommend slightly increasing your glucose take if you're a college student or going back to school and you're exposing yourself to a lot of new things. So just to kind of replace that stuff. Yeah, isn't it, man? The human body is amazing.
It's crazy. That's probably why I've been so tired my whole career, because I've been doing nothing but technology certification training and learning, and technology never stops changing. So I'm just stuck in this learning mode. So,
well, try and work
anyway. I might as well finish it.
Yeah, try and work an additional 200 milligrams of glucose into your diet, Mike. Maybe it'll perk you right up.
Yeah, I'll give that a go. So do we have much in the way of news and notes around the NFL? I honestly haven't looked. I've been
busy. Yeah,
busy at work and
well,
all the others. So
the only thing that I really saw that's jumping to mind, at least, is that this gambling probe that the NFL has given a second go around to apparently is targeting Indianapolis Colts cornerback Isaiah Rodgers as somebody who has been prolific in betting. Now, I don't know if that's on NFL games or what the details were. All I saw was that he was named as the target of the probe, or one of the targets, and he's placed numerous bets over the last 2 years in the $25 to $50 range. So come on. I mean,
and not on in the NFL, right?
Well, that I don't know, right? That changes that's the detail that I think matters the most, is that if it's like insider trading, right? You just know more about what's going on. So
yeah, I had read that there were 7 or 8 different players that all came out and said, we didn't know that you couldn't do this at facilities. We're not doing on the NFL, but we didn't know that. And this could be literally any of us, because this was not communicated very well. So I'm really curious to see what comes out of all that whole thing.
I did read some blurb that when Jameson Williams, or a teammate of Jameson's, so a Lion, was asked about him, they said that it was never communicated properly to the players that could not happen. Yeah. So let's assume that's true, right? So let's assume that's true. that's on the Lions organization in order to say, like, you can't do this. This is out of bounds, right? Now, I've also seen an article that says the NFL did a poor job of communicating to teams that they needed to educate their players. So, if that's true, like, if this is on the NFL, then I don't know that the suspensions are really warranted. If the NFL communicated this information to all of the teams, and then the teams did a bad job of educating their players, I would say the suspensions were warranted. But I don't really expect the NFL to just bite the bullet on that one. They could.
Yeah, I doubt that they're going to admit that they had any fault in this.
Right.
That's not the way that I see the NFL going. But there was one that there was an anonymous NFL player that had mentioned that, like, it is so confusing. I've asked our representative a couple times about, can I do this? What can I do? I don't really know. And I want to say he said that something to the effect of, like, I asked him if I could, bet on college basketball, and he said fine, but never even mentioned that you can't do it while you're at a facility, only at home. And so there was yeah, that sounds fine to me. And then if you didn't ask the follow-up question of, does it matter where I place that bet? The information that you got was, yeah, go for it. So I'll be curious to see what comes out on that, whether it's just, I've sent enough emails with details and then gotten questions on, like, hey, what about this? I'm like, read the email, right? So I'm not going to blame the NFL until I know, like, did they just not read the email? Did they not watch the training video or whatever they were supposed to do to communicate? I can't blame one, and not the other until we have a little bit more information.
Yeah, I think that where this all starts is, like, if you're going to suspend Calvin Ridley, like 2 years ago or whatever it was, for placing a bet on an NFL game, like, if that had not been properly communicated at that time, it mattered because he lost a whole year.
Yeah.
And so then in the wake of that, if that's still not communicated, like, what the hell? Like,
yeah,
fool me once, but fool me twice, So all I know is they're probably not rescinding Jameson's 6-game suspension, unfortunately. So we're just going to have to deal with the fact that he's going to have to pay the piper on that.
Is what it is.
Yeah. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we are going to discuss. Okay. We are going to discuss an article.
Regression.
All right. An article that was put out by Pride of Detroit this last week, and it's titled 5 Reasons the Detroit Lions May Not Live Up to the Offseason Hype. So I thought, okay, like, let's just examine, this person's thought process, or at least, like, not because I don't think they're going to live up to the hype. I think they will. But, it's always good to see what obstacles might be in your path. So they listed 5 reasons. We are going to discuss those 5, and Mike, you came up with one more. So
I did.
And then we're just going to jump into them right off the bat here. So Mike made up a really pretty banner. Here we go.
There we go. Look at that.
Yeah. So there's not a lot to say about this first one, which is injuries. So you have to mention it, I suppose, because it matters so much. But they're random.
Yeah.
So you don't know who, you don't know what, you don't know when. You can't plan for it. You just have to deal with it if and when it happens.
Yep. The trick is building your team with enough depth where you can withstand injuries at key players. If Jared Goff goes down, we've got Sudfeld until Hooker down, later in the season, potentially becomes available. Can we withstand that? If Hutch goes down, what do we do there? If Ragnow goes down, all right, we've got some depth around that offensive line. We've got some pretty decent depth pieces. So that's essentially what you need to do. Just build a team where a key piece isn't crippling if they go down. But
Exactly.
if you knew if someone's going to go down,
Right.
you would find their replacement and have them on the roster right away.
Go get a lottery ticket. Yeah.
Yes, you'll also do that.
There he is. And so, Dr. Detroit is a large reason why I was interested in this article is because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Detroit, but he's got the Lions winning, I think, the same number of games that they won last year, 9, going 9-8. So, what could facilitate that, right? So so injuries, right? You have to, pay homage to the fact that they exist, but you can't predict them, right? So when we did our picks for the Lions record, it was everybody in the NFL was not hurt.
Yeah.
That's not realistic. That's going to change.
All things being equal, health-wise, exactly. Right?
Yeah. So a lot of the time, it's the teams that are the least hurt that do the best, shockingly. But we also have some other factors to discuss here. So the second one mentioned in the article is sophomore slumps. So who are our sophomores? Aiden Hutchinson. I'm not really going to throw Jamison Williams into this batch. Like, he played 6 or 7 games last season, and he's going to miss.
He had a catch.
He had 1 catch. Yep.
He had a touchdown. What more can he's 100% on touchdowns.
It's true. So, I don't really think that he hasn't really had a chance to quote unquote hit his stride yet. Yeah. So I don't know that he can have a slump because he's never really started. So what would a slump from Aiden Hutchinson look like, right? So when I think of a slump, what I think is other teams have a year and an off season to watch all your game film and plan for you. Find your weaknesses, find what you're bad at, and what has frustrated you from other teams over the course of the year, and then try and replicate it. So, for example, if Aiden just didn't do well against getting chipped, I wouldn't be surprised if teams motion a chipper to whatever side of the field he's on. You could expect to see a lot of that or something.
Yeah.
But he had, what did he end up having? 9.5 sacks? 9 sacks?
I believe it was 9.5 sacks from him, and then 8 or 8.5 from Houston.
Yeah. So there was a half sack in there somewhere that was I wasn't sure who got it.
Yeah.
Or what have you. So yeah. So is a slump 7 sacks anything less than what he had last year?
I think it's mostly going to be on the impact, right? I mean, yes, his job is to sack the quarterback. I think it's going to be more about the impact that he has on the game. Is he pressuring him, the quarterback? Is he, wrapping up the tackles when the running back does run his way? I don't think he's going to have 3 more interceptions. That's probably an anomaly for his position, let alone for a rookie. Yeah. He was the first NFL rookie in history to have over 8 sacks and 3 interceptions as a rookie. And I think only 3 others in history, non-rookies, have ever done it. So
it's a weird combination, right?
It is. I mean, when you're rushing the passer, you're not out in the field catching balls typically. So,
right.
I think it's more about the impact that he has, not necessarily the sack totals. Sack totals are the metric, right? That's what everybody's going to look at. But to me, if he has 8 sacks, but he has a lot more pressure, and he's making the offense change their game plan, I think that's still a win.
Yeah. Okay. Herbie Joseph. He's another guy that had a really great rookie season, right? Got a lot of production out of him. Wasn't even expected to play.
Talking about Aaron Rodgers' daddy, right?
That's correct. Wasn't expected to play. Tracy Walker goes down in game 3 or 4 of the season. He's forced to play, does real well, right?
Yep.
We can thank him for the last pass that Aaron Rodgers ever threw in the NFC North to be an interception. That was awesome. Really excited about that. They told him that he can't do any more backflips coming out of the tunnel. Don't want him to get hurt. So I saw that blurb the other day. I thought that was kind of funny.
There's a risk-reward ratio there that's not on his side.
Yeah, like, we get it, Kirby. You're excited. So what would a slump from Kirby Joseph look like? Like, I think you can't rely on the turnover production. I think he had 4 picks last year in, 14 games, something like that. That's good. From his spot. But, like, I don't expect him to have 4 picks. Like, that is his role. Like, he is the quintessential free safety who's going to go back there and play center field. So I do expect that he will have an impact on, like, deep passes, but whether or not those are going to end up being interceptions is kind of up for debate. But, like, if he gets lost in coverage, which I wouldn't expect, like, if he gets if there's, like, poor communication between him and his new teammates, something like that, and he's the one that's like responsible for the play going, like, being successful or going south, that would be something that I think you could look at as regression, especially if it's not cleaned up by the coaching staff for the following week, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, like, I really don't know what a regression would look like from a free safety. Like, it's just not knowing your assignments. And I got to imagine that's going to be a huge focus for the Detroit Lions, because he's penciled in as a starter, across from who's going to be the other starting safety if Walker's not back for game 1. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Gardner-Johnson.
So, and then they probably play Branch or somebody at nickel corner, or maybe Mosley at nickel, and they put Jerry Jacobs on the outside, something like that. But, like, as far as a slump is concerned, like, I'm not sure what it would look like. Pascal would be the guy I would be worried about with a slump. Like, is he going to have enough snaps? Is he going to be able to carve out enough snaps, no matter where he plays on the line, to get into a rhythm, right? Because now we have
see that
Romeo Okwara is quote unquote healthy going into this season. Charles Harris is healthy going into this season. You have Aiden locking down one side. James Houston is going to get more snaps. Like, they re-signed their Isaiah Buggs and John Kaminsky. So where is the niche for Josh Pascal? Like, some of these guys have got to carve out a spot for themselves, right? Like, these are probably camp battles to figure out the defensive end depth. So
I'm not as worried about Pascal. I think our biggest opportunity for a sophomore slump, or just a slump season in general, although this case it is a sophomore slump, I think is James Houston. I think he had outstanding numbers, like 8 sacks in. I mean, he missed the first 6-7 games. Like, he was cut. He was
cut, yeah.
Right? We don't even get the benefit of his rookie contract now. So,
no.
And all that. So, like, I think that he came in, played primarily on third downs. The last couple of games, he got a couple more downs, wasn't just third downs. And he put up great numbers. I just don't think that he can hit that kind of a rate continuously. And I think he's going to be the one that's going to be like, it was the reason why you were on the practice squad to start and then came back in like, hey, I got my shot. I'm going to show him what I can do. But now there's tape on you. So he's the guy that I think of as probably the biggest slump risk.
If he does have another 8-sack season, his contract is up after this season is over.
Yeah.
And
he'll be paid more than Hutchinson.
He very well could be making more. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't. What does Aiden make? It's not. It's not $5 million a year, is it? Yeah, it's got to be $5 million.
Oh
I'll
yeah,
look it up real
it's
quick.
it's like 7.5 or 8, I think.
Race ya. He's making his cap number is 8.1 this year. So like, I think you could see. I think that you could see him get around that number. Would it be insane if James Houston has another 8-sack season in 18 games,
or even 10 sacks, right? If he actually does have a slump and like kills it,
right? And at the end of the season, they're like, "We'll give you a 3-year, $30 million contract."
It wouldn't be, but it'd be hilarious because he's gonna be making more than Hutchinson.
Yeah, I mean, like they'll
He'll
go
be
into next
9.4 million or 9.7 million next season or the following.
I mean, Aiden is going to get the bag. I mean, and on his second deal, so I would think so.
Yeah.
Of course, sophomore slumps are the reason that like Chase Young didn't have his option picked up, right? Like he was hurt.
Well, his wasn't just sophomore. His was like sophomore and junior.
He had a great rookie season.
Yeah.
He got hurt in his second season.
Yeah.
And he was coming back from injury in his third season. Like, yes, you're right. It's not he's on the field and not playing well.
Yeah.
It's he's not on the field. But like both of those things.
It was the DeAndre Swift slump.
Right. Okay.
Well, I mean, like that was Swift, right? Like his biggest problem was his availability.
Yes. He averaged like 13 games a season.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
he missed like a third of the season every year.
Well, I mean, considering that like it would have been 20% because most of those seasons were 16-game seasons. 3 out of 16 is not 30%.
Yeah, that's true. But like at the same time, I would argue that even though he only missed a limited number of full games last year, he was not.
I mean, but
near 100%? What's that?
I mean, like that's just it. I mean, like Frank Ragnow was never 100%.
Yeah, well, the difference is Frank still played like a great and had huge years, even though he had issues.
Yeah, I know, but
was
like
very inconsistent.
Right. So I mean, it's not about him being injured. It's about what kind of productivity they have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and like what's causing the lack of productivity. So yeah, Frank Ragnow with the toe issue, which is apparently not going to be able to be fixed until he retires.
Oh, really? Jesus.
He said that surgery cannot fix his toe. Like he needs like reconstructive surgery that would require too much time on an NFL schedule. So
that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So his toe or whatever that's caused him all these problems since like last year is just completely wrecked. It's got to be ligament damage. But like, yeah, you're right. Like he basically like bites down on a piece of bark and like goes out there and like just plays well. But like at the same time, like
love that visual.
And that's all well and good and everything's fine. And he can miss practice leading up to the game and rest and rehab and not go through the grind of it. I don't care about that part. But like if his play gets considerably worse in one season, you have to ask yourself, is this the toe? What do we do if it's the toe? What if he's now this player? Like he makes almost $17 million a year. So like, I don't like if Frank Ragnow goes south. I know this isn't a sophomore slump, but like he's also the longest tenured player on the team. Like his contract is not up until 2026. So I mean, like some of the sophomores are not the guys that I'm really worried about slumping. It's some of the guys that like Frank Ragnow, not Eric Decker. Geez, he was a wide receiver for the Jets, like Taylor Decker.
Yeah.
If these guys lose, from what I understand, the meat on the bottom of his foot near his big toe is no longer connected. That's gross. That's straight up gross.
That's got to be painful too. Jeez.
So like, So like Taylor Decker is a good tackle in the NFL. I wouldn't consider him elite. I wouldn't consider him above average for the position that he plays.
He's
But,
average.
but he is getting a good deal to be a solid tackle on that offensive line.
Yeah.
But if he drops 5 points in like a PFF scoring sense, like now you have to be concerned, because what do you do? Like,
Yeah.
I think that, and like we've talked about the scenarios, but like my guess is that when Penei Sewell signs his next contract, his big top of the market deal that you're going to have to give him, he'll be playing left tackle, and you probably draft a right
see
tackle.
That. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
So
the other thing outside of the sophomore, the next one on the list here, change at skill positions. Mm-hmm. There's been a little bit of turnover, right? So we've got Jahmyr Gibbs replacing DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
We've got David Montgomery replacing Jamal Williams. We've got, not that I would consider tight end a skill position, but we've got, I mean, it kind of is, I guess, but we've got the Iowa guy, Sam Laporta replacing Hockenson, more or less. Or the combination of Brock Wright and whoever the hell else we had. But like, we have some changeovers there. We've got the defense, and we'll kind of talk more about the defense in the next point, but like the defense is all changed over, especially in the secondary. So let's talk offense and where some of the challenges are going to be coming from with the offense. On the progression versus regression, I think that, so there's, to me, I see progress, you see regress, and I see neutral, right? Your car's in forward, reverse, or it's just sitting there in park. And I think when I look at each of the main position groups, quarterback, it's the same guy, right? He's got most of the team around him. I think that this is going to be a really big year for him, because the question, he's going to have to answer the following question. Is the Jared Goff of the Lions the same Jared Goff of the last 11 games, or the same Jared Goff of the first 24 games, right? So he was very inconsistent his first year. Yeah, we had a terrible team around him. Okay, we'll throw that out. He was also really bad the first 7 games of this year. So, like, what's the real Jared Goff? I think the good news is he ended the season really strong, right? He threw 1 interception in the last 11 games. We won 8 of our last 10. He played he only had, so on the PFF grades, he had 0 grades in the 90s. 1 game, hold on one second here. Let me bring it up on the other screen. He had 0 games graded in the 90s, 3 in the 80s, 4 in the 70s, 3 in the 60s, 4 in the 50s, and 3 under 50. So he had 7 of his 17 games graded under 60. In comparison, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, and Cousins had a total of 8. Like, he had some really good games and he had some stinkers. And the good news is, in his last 11 games, in the last 6 games, 5 of his 70 or above grades were in the 5 of the last 6 games. So he was trending good at the end of the season, and lo and behold, we won. A bunch of those games. So that's a step where, is he going to keep edging forward and continue that play where he's in the 70s and 80s and maybe even hit a 90 or something? Or does he kind of regress a little bit? I'm hopeful, because I'm a sucker and I'm a Lions fan and always hopeful. I'm hopeful that he's going to continue going in the forward, with some forward momentum. On the running back side, can Gibbs and Montgomery really do much more than the almost 2,400 yards rushing and like 23 touchdowns that our other guys did? convinced. Like, I think that's going to be a neutral, to be honest.
So for the offense, I do think Laporta will probably be an upgrade over Wright.
Yes.
But is he going to be what he's billed to be is my question. Like this kind of like in space, hard to bring down, elusive runner with the football, right? So like I think that the kind of play that he's going to be very good at is like the Brock Wright play against the Jets, where it was like a 4-yard
3-yard dump
and he
50
took it
run
50 for a touchdown.
Yeah.
I think like he will do better at that than say Brock Wright did. But how much, I have no idea how to gauge that. So like, but I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he will be better at it than the guy in the roster because they invested a draft pick in him.
Yep.
Gibbs and Montgomery. I think David Montgomery is a better runner of the football than Jamison Williams. Jamal Williams.
Possibly both. I don't know. Maybe he's better than both at running.
I have been misspeaking all day long. I apologize. So like Jamal Williams, 17 touchdowns. I don't think that's on the docket.
Yeah.
1,100 yards rushing. Yeah, I think that's probably feasible. Gibbs versus Swift. Here's what I'll say. Gibbs had better not get hurt.
Yeah.
If Gibbs misses any time this year or in his rookie deal due to injury, and it's like 4 games in a season, I'll be like, no different than Swift. And I will be the bell cow, like, hear ye. Any motherfucker that reads this, realize this is exactly the same thing that happened to DeAndre Swift. Now, if he doesn't get hurt, that's the difference, right? Like, that's going to be the torch and pitchfork moment for everybody that hates DeAndre Swift, right? Like, this guy's at least healthy. Oh, thank God.
Right.
Now, the combination of those two guys, if Montgomery is an upgrade over Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs is physically
the same
healthy,
or better,
then like I don't know that the running game could be any worse than what it was last year, and it was effective last year. And I don't need it to be 70-30 run to pass. I just need the running game to be effective so that we're in like good down and distance.
Yeah.
Because
that's going to be one of the biggest things that's going to affect how well Jared Goff plays, right? Because if we have no good running game, he is great on play action. He was the 3rd best graded quarterback on play action. That is his bread and butter.
He has to have.
He was 29th in non-play action. Like if it's not a play action, he is not good. And that's been his whole career. It wasn't just last year. Like that's been the knock on him his whole career. So for the love of God, those guys better stay healthy and run the ball.
Correct. So I completely agree. So, Marvin Jones is back. What will that look like? I mean, people liked DJ Chark, but he only played 11 games. Like, so it's 2/3 of the season. I don't know. Like,
I think Jones is a worse version of Chark, though.
I do think it's a downgrade, right? So, like, we talked last week. Like, I would go sign DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
For and if you get 6, 7, 8 games out of him, great. You made up for JMO for the first, part of the season.
And you don't have to play Khalif Raymond or Reynolds for those games.
Right.
Win-win.
Yeah.
I mean, they're good depth guys, right? We need them on the team. Raymond's a great returner and whatnot. But, like, let's be real. D-Hop is better than both of those. He is a strict upgrade.
That's a big target. Okay. I liked Marvin Jones when he was here with Stafford.
Yep.
And if he gets something like 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, I'll be thrilled. As the, quote unquote 3rd wide receiver. I think the group will suffer if they take production away from St. Brown. Like St. Brown is the I mean, feed that dude. 11 catches, 100 yards, 6-7 touchdowns. Well, so that's weird because like the touchdown total is a yearly projection and the other thing also was per game. But like, he should have 100 catches for like 1,100 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns at the end of the season. But it's the defense. I guess we'll move into point 4 here. It's the defensive unit cohesion that I think is going to be the problem. Like when the Lions were in trouble last year before Aubrey Pleasant was fired, it was the secondary is not on the same page.
Historically bad. Historically bad.
And like you could see it, like the loss to Minnesota was a blown coverage. KJ Osborne gets behind the defense. They score the go-ahead touchdown. And that's just a communication issue. So what do we do? Like this is, Sutton, Mosley, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Walker may not be back right away. So the only person that's been in that backfield to start the season is Kirby Joseph, who was a sophomore. Yeah. Year 2 for him. So
Jeff Okuda's gone. Right?
Jeff Okuda is gone. He is a Falcon. And you could have, I don't know that Mosley, I don't know where Mosley's timeline is. So like, could they trot out week 1 something like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Kirby Joseph as the safeties, Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, and Brian Branch in the slot? So now you have a rookie, a career backup, and someone who's new to the team, and being
a sophomore.
Yeah, with your sophomore. And so like I do think that this early part of the season, getting all of those guys on the same page is completely critical. Because if the secondary plays adequately, I think this defense is what you saw over the last 10 games of the season.
If they were middle of the pack defense, which is a huge upgrade from historically bad, right?
Huge upgrade.
Yeah.
Right. Like the offense, if the offense does what it did last year, or is even just a couple of spots worse in like overall offensive ranking, they're going to win games. Yeah. If the defense starts off where they left off last season, this team has a real chance, I think, to impress Dr. Detroit, which
agreed
is a high bar, so that would be excellent. But and I think the key to the whole thing is like, I don't have questions about the defensive line. The linebacker core is the same thing, maybe better than it was last year. Can all of those secondary players get on the same page? There's a lot of veterans, they can be used in different packages. That's what I'm concerned about, is that when they are used in different packages, are they going to know this is my responsibility? This is where I need to hand this receiver off to this other player, or I need to stick with them. I've got deep, you've got up, whatever the case may be. So key to the whole thing, I think, is those secondary players. Are we on the same page? If yes, I think we'll have a great season.
What's your gut?
I think
if you were a betting man, are we going to be on the ball right away? Are we going to be slow coming out of the gate?
So I think the problem that they had last year was I don't think that they could start the same 5 players in the secondary on a week-to-week thing. There were just, he's healthy this week, he's not healthy the next week. Tracy Walker was playing excellent before he got hurt, and like that roughs it up. And now you're playing Deshaun Elliott, back there, and he was a free agent signing who you probably wanted just to be a special teamer for you most of the time, and like then you had to go out and re-sign CJ Moore, and you had to continue to like bring guys in, move guys up. Like the Lions moved a lot of players in and out of their practice squad last year to the active roster, to the point where they had to, like, I believe, restructure 2 contracts just so they had the cap space to continue making those moves.
Yeah.
So like the injury and like the shuffling effect, the shell game that they were playing with the defensive secondary, I think hurt them immensely. Now, you bring in Sutton, you bring in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you bring in Mosley. Well, Mosley's recovering. Tracy Walker's recovering. Tracy Walker can be in that building.
Yep.
And being like, okay, here, you guys need to be here. You know, this is, when this thing happens, you got to hand him off. Oh, this guy, Justin Jefferson, he likes to do this. Like, he can be there and like helping reduce that learning curve until he's ready to go. But like, to me, if we can get 9 or 10 games of Walker and Joseph, Sutton, Mosley, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, this team is looking at winning the division and maybe a playoff game. So that's my fingers crossed. Please let this happen, football gods, kind of prayer for this upcoming season.
So when we look at the schedule, it's both good and bad to start the season. The bad is we start with Kansas City week 1. The week where we're going to have the least amount of practice together, right, is week 1, and the most amount is week 18, right? So like the very first game where we're actually playing live, we're going to play against Patrick Mahomes,
the best quarterback.
Yeah, in the game, right? So when people are like, we can take them, I'm like, I'm not sure we're at their level yet, and our defense is almost completely new in the secondary. I think they're going to eat us up. I think they're going to beat us. But the good news is after that, we're at home against Seattle. We're at home against Atlanta. We are in Green Bay on prime time against Jordan Love, which is going to be a question mark right now. Maybe by then he'll be less of a question mark. But and then at home against Carolina, we've got, outside of that first game where I think we're probably going to get waxed, we've got some pretty solid teams matchups where we can have a young gelling defensive secondary and not have it be devastatingly bad for us. So I think at least we got that going for us, which is nice.
Excellent. Yeah. So now that you've talked a little bit about the schedule, nice setup, by the way.
See what I did there?
I did. I caught it. The strength of the schedule. So as your team improves, theoretically, they make you play harder teams, right? We want those good matchups for primetime or what have you, right? And so the Lions proved that they were a better team than people thought. Always go out there and play hard. You're going to get an entertaining football game, if not a W, when Detroit takes the field. So we're playing better teams this season than we were a season ago. Now, luckily for us, Mike is going to sell us clothes.
Well, let's see if I can go into immersive reader mode or something. Does this not have?
I was like, it's a lot of shirts.
There's no.
So that's okay. Just make it bigger. Maybe we can block out some of that stuff. There. Nice.
There we go.
So this is just a ranking of how good each team or their strength of schedule score.
Strength of schedule. Yep. So opponent win percentage going into the season. We are down at 20th. Our opponents are just a touch under 500. And not surprisingly, because we are all in the same division, the Bears and the Vikings have very similar opponents. Therefore, they have very similar strength of schedules.
Yep.
And I don't know where Green Bay is. They're way down at 24. So one of their flex games is obviously a really lousy team.
Okay. To me, the challenge that the schedule presents is not in how good the opponents are that you're going to play, right? Like, I'm of the belief that it doesn't matter who you're playing. You have to go out and just play them like they're humans and go out there and try and win the game.
They're opposing professional football players that are good at what they do.
Yeah. The opponents are also being paid millions of dollars.
Yes.
To me, the schedule was absolutely perfect last season. Last season was, you got your Thanksgiving Day game, but Otherwise, it's 1 p.m. on Sunday the whole time. And that routine was great. And they traveled about the least amount of any team in the NFL, which I think like really matters. So like I understand that a lot of people are very excited that Detroit is getting primetime games. What I dislike about that is it disrupts the routine the players are in for most of the season. And I dislike having a long or a short week because it's disruptive to routine. So that to me is how well are you like, and the coaches didn't have to do it last year. The coaching staff did not have to work and figure out like, okay, we've got a short week. We're going on the road. How are we going to do X, Y, and Z that we would normally do? Like, what are we leaving out when we were having normally another 2 days to do?
Yeah. Is it the rest day? Is it the walkthrough? Right. Is it, yeah.
Now, I think that there's a similar problem. It may not seem like one, but I do think there's a similar problem on the opposite side of that coin where it's like you have 10 days between your last game and your next. And it's like, well, what do we do? Do we give them more rest? Like, do we want to do a light practice? Do we want to do a practice where we are hitting in pads? Like, what's the game plan here? You know, and it's like, well, too much of this or too little of that could really also throw off the balance of this team. And like, I thought last season, if you had asked me, Drew Forsyth, to pick how the Lions schedule lined up year in and year out, I would have picked what we had last year. Yeah. That was great. This is a little bit different. So like I'm happy that the fans are happy, but I'm anxious about how it's going to affect the team. I hope that it's not a negative change. So don't care about the teams we're going to play. The Lions have even when they were in their 3-win season a couple of years ago, those guys went out and played tough as a less talented roster playing against some really good teams. And it was a field goal, like a NFL career-long field goal here, you know, like a Hail Mary, you know, a 45-yard pass by Josh Jacobs, or Josh Allen, not Josh Jacobs. He's a running back. That's ridiculous.
That would be crazy, Drew.
You know, on Thanksgiving, like with like 17 seconds left or whatever, you know, you give up a 45-yard pass to Josh Allen immediately. You know, they run one more play, position the ball, spike it or call timeout, kick a manageable field goal, and take the game, you know, from you at home on your, you know, on Thanksgiving, which is supposed to be your game. You know, stuff like that. So they're going to play tough. They're going to play tough. I don't think it's the other team that's the obstacle. I think it's the how well do you adapt.
It's more the schedule than the strength of schedule.
Right.
It's well, and the interesting thing, last year we started out the season, like going into the season, we had the 5th easiest strength of schedule based on the previous our opponent's previous year's records, and we ended up 6th, 7th hardest schedule based on how they actually played. So like last year's last year, right? All those bad teams got better.
Yeah, none of those teams are the same.
Yeah, they also had draft picks, probably higher than us. Well, maybe not. Thank you, Rams. But like probably high draft picks, right? So like, let's not assume that last year's going to mean anything this year. The Lions know that very, very well.
Right.
So I think when we look at the ability for us to do well this next season, and the reason why I added this as the 6th one, I think are the biggest difference is going to be in the turnovers. And just like injuries, it's also the only thing you can't guarantee and you can't really control. They're very lucky. Sometimes it's the bounce, like you force a fumble and it bounces right back into their hands. Oh, that's a bummer. Or it bounces into your hands. Oh, that's lucky. Like you can't control that bounce. Goff had the third most turnover worthy plays. The good news is those are turnover worthy plays because they weren't turnovers. The bad news is that's a lot of them. And if any of those didn't bounce off the defender's chest on accident, or instead of tipping the fingers that they caught it, like any of those could have been actual turnovers. So that's, I think, going to be the big thing. I was looking at the turnover differential. The Lions were number 4 last year with a +7.
Right.
That's really good.
Amazing.
This was 2022. So giveaways, takeaways, like and I have not looked at like where are all these other teams each year? Like, did they change? Are they consistently at the top? Some of them might be, and it may be a scheme thing, it may be a player thing, but like where the Cowboys were +14 in 2021, where were they in 2022? They were at +10, so not as high, but they still were second. So if you have a good enough scheme, if you have good enough players, you could potentially go away here. You could potentially keep that kind of stuff up, but it's a crapshoot, right? You don't know what you're going to get. And turnovers, if we know anything about football, more games are decided by turnovers than basically anything else. If you win your turnover differential in a game, you are far likelier to win the game. And I think if we just really want to keep this number positive and as highly positive as we can. So if we are back down to, can you imagine if this was even? We wouldn't be 9 and 8.
No chance.
No, we would. I mean, we had too many really close games, and that one turnover is most likely points in the other direction.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to add that on there. It wasn't in the Pride of Detroit's article, but again, just like injuries, it's something you really can't count on. You can only partially control. But that was the one I wanted to make sure we kind of talked about. Did you have any other thoughts on turnovers?
I have one thought.
Yeah.
So creating turnovers for a defense, I agree with you completely. It is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
The thing that I think the Lions may have, I don't know, I don't want to say come to Jesus, but like figured out effectively is the last 10 games, how do we limit Jared Goff and not put him in a position to make a mistake? So like, it's the limiting of your own giveaways that I think that the Lions are going to excel at. And so if they can keep the number of fumbles, that they create, and if they don't put Jared Goff in a position to make turnover-worthy plays, then I think that they will keep their own turnovers down, and then any that happen to come up due to the defense, being in the right spot. I mean, like, all 3 interceptions that Aiden had last year were just him being in the right spot. Like if he regresses to the mean and it's 0 interceptions for him, that's a plus.
Just normal for his position, right?
Right. It's not a +7, it's a +4.
Right.
That's a big deal. And like his first one was he picked off Aaron Rodgers in the end zone. Another was one that killed a drive in the Bears game. So like timely, but unlikely. So I do think we have a lot better players on defense, and sometimes just knowing what position you're supposed to be in, what the other team is doing, and like having that like I'm winning the game mentally approach.
Yeah. Like Funky mentions, 2 actual pick sixes in 1 score games. Those were
losses.
They were losses because of those. I mean, there were other factors, right? Those weren't the only scores. It wasn't like, they were 7-0, and that was the thing. But like, those were the difference. And against the Eagles, Goff threw for 256 yards, had 4 touchdowns.
Right.
No, sorry, that was Washington. Against the Eagles, he had 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 6. Which negates essentially one of his touchdowns.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're sitting there with 215-1 with a 5.8 yards per attempt, and you're like, oh, no wonder we lost.
Right. It looks a lot worse, right?
It does. Yes, our defense gave up 38 points, and yes, our offense gave up 35. But actually, our defense didn't give up the 38 points, right?
Right.
A touchdown of that was not their fault.
Yeah, but it goes on them, you know? So
it does.
Which is yet another thing that I think needs to be adjusted in the way that we look at, things like, the defense, the offense gave up 7 of those points. So, like, the defense should be penalized for the points they gave up when they were on the field.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But to your point, though, like, I think they did a really good job after about week 7, week 8, of figuring out, like, what can we do to stop Jared Goff from being a turnover machine? Because that's what he was those first several games. He averaged a turnover a game. He had 6 turnovers in the first 6 weeks.
Right.
And what you found was in our wins, they reduced his average depth of target.
Right.
So they said, and they his time to throw, they shrunk it. Right. Keep it quick. Keep it short. Don't let it go downfield. Allow for check downs. Allow for a lot of the shorter things. And big time throws in our wins, he had less than 1 per win. He had 1.4 in our losses. So I think, and this is why when people are like, analytics don't matter, they absolutely matter. Because the Lions see this, right? They see what we're doing, and they're like, we're trying to make him do too much. Let's not make him make big throws, downfield throws, tight window throws. Let's do the short stuff. Let's do the quick stuff. Let's not make him think too hard and make sure we've got young players that he's working with. Let's make sure that we can do these quick things. And those started winning. Like the last 6 games, he had 5 games in the 70s. He had 2 games in the 80s. Well, 70 or above. He had 2 games in the 80s. Like, you got to keep doing that. Now, granted, the average depth of target.
Yeah.
Right? But, like, that's fine. I don't care if his average depth of target is 4 if we win every game.
Sure.
Just work around it. That's what they did.
Winning is the stat that matters the most.
Exactly. So I think they did a really good job of, to your point, I think they did a really good job of identifying that stuff, making changes, changing our scheme, and it did good for us.
Right.
A lot of W's.
It was great. Their turnover differential in the last 10 games was, I mean, you would be shocked. They completely flipped it from the first 7. So, and that's, I think, the number one reason why I think that they turned their season around is they got the turnovers heading in the right direction, which is for us, right? Not for our opponents.
Yep.
So all in all, these are obstacles that the Lions are going to have to deal with and overcome in some respect. I don't know that sophomore slumps are something that I'm too worried about. I'm always worried about injuries. The changes at the skill position should be a good thing, but just like the defensive cohesion, like how fast those guys get up to speed.
Yeah.
The strength
we
of the
talk about Campbell.
Yeah, right.
Being a new guy, right?
Right.
Anzalone, Campbell, Rodrigo, and only 2 of them are going to be on the field at any one time, possibly only 1, depending on the formation.
Right. So the only one there that I think is completely outside any amount of control for the Detroit Lions is their strength of schedule. Who you're playing, when you're playing them, where you're playing them. How well do they adapt to that? To me, that's on the coaches. That's their job to get the team ready to prepare for whomever they're playing. This will be a good season to evaluate how well they do at that particular thing. And if they do well, I think that they'll perform well.
I think the coaches have a lot to do with number 2, though, as well, right? That sophomore slump, right? Putting those guys in positions to succeed, identifying the same things, because you self-scout, so you got to identify the same things that your opponents are identifying about what is your tendencies, and coaching those guys up. So I think those 2 are probably the biggest things, and it's all about coaching.
Right. Now, that's about our show for today. But I wanted to run an idea by you for a future show. And I was hoping we would have Joey and maybe a couple other guys here for this. And it's either Funky or Detroit that's left in the chat. But what I would like to do, Mike, is did you ever play Madden?
It's been a while. If it's not old school Nintendo up, down, A and B, like
Sure.
I can't grasp it, but I have. I'm not good.
What I would like to do is to take all the teams in the NFL and all the players in the NFL and put all the players in one big pool. And I'd like to take all the teams and simulate a draft. And you and I each control one NFL
You call
team.
those fantasy football drafts.
Well, I mean, like top to bottom. I mean, like you're not drafting guards in fantasy football.
That's fair. That is fair.
That kind of thing. But like, and we draft a team based on who's available. I would love to do that.
Would we do that for all 32 teams?
No, we would do that. No. Like we would each. I think what would be best is either we each draft for our own teams, and like you be the Lions and I'll be the 49ers or somebody, or we just both put our input in for the Lions,
yeah,
and see what we could come up with.
And you can do that in Madden, I take it?
You can do that in Madden.
Excellent. So you'd have to share your screen because I'm not be able to do that.
So I'll see if it's possible. I don't want to spend $60 on Madden if it's not possible. Or maybe
Right.
this is something that we could do off camera and like do a recorded show.
Yeah.
And because maybe Danny could help us out, right? Danny, we could get Danny on the
You
show.
play some Madden, I believe.
Yeah. Maybe you could ask your kid if he's got Madden set up, and maybe we make a Saturday morning out of it or something like that.
All right.
So, but yeah, other than that, I think that's a wrap for today.
It is.
So you can catch us live every Tuesday at 7 Eastern. That we have no plans to change that in the near future.
Oh.
I think we're 100 days out from start football.
93, because I believe last Tuesday was 100 days out.
90, less than 100 days out from.
Less than 100 days.
So that'll be fun. If you've got any questions, comments, constructive criticism, if it's negative criticism, I don't really want to hear it. But
I'm fine with hearing it. Send it in anyway.
All right. You can send it in to casualgmpodcast@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter at casualgm1.
Right on. Well, appreciate you jumping on. This was fun. I think overall, I think we're going to do good. Like, I think we're going to do really well. I don't think there's the doom and gloom of like a big regression. But there's definitely a lot of things that could go sideways. I just put on my rose-colored glasses and hope for the best. And I think that we're going to have a pretty solid team. There's a reason why we're being talked about as a top 3 team in the NFC. In the NFC.
Yeah,
we're definitely top 3 in the NFC North. Definitely.
Yeah, 100%. So the problem I have is like, okay, now there's expectations for this team. And it's been a minute since there have been realistic expectations for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, but what, 2018 maybe was the last time?
Maybe,
like,
yeah. So,
all right, guys.
See. It's going to be fun.
All right, we'll see you guys. Thanks for joining, and we will catch you next Tuesday.
See you guys.